Hey guys, and welcome to another breakdown video. This video I'm going to be breaking down Tsar, which is the first track of my EP Tines, which came out in 2019. Yeah, let's start off here with the intro. Okay, so the very first thing here is a piano, well, a very heavily modified piano, which sounds like this. And so I'll turn off all the effects and just go through it. It's the main piano sound is one I use a lot in this track, which is Lab's soft piano. You love to hear it. But the main thing obviously that's giving it its character is the effects here. So I have this piano exciter rack, which if I turn off just the reverb and the filtering, makes it sound like this. Not like that. And so what's happening here is the first thing is a pitch tracking vocoder, which is why it kind of sounds like trash there, because the pitch tracking doesn't quite work, but it's trying to detect the pitch of the piano and layering it with its own oscillator. And then I just have a couple of settings there to kind of better suit the piano, so I turned up the release time and turned down the performance, and I'm automating the dry wet over time here, kind of for the uglier parts, turning it down. After that, I have this grain delay, which is making the sort of octave up effect, where when you turn this frequency all the way, well, not all the way, but quite far down and turn the pitch up an octave, you get a nice stereo layer of an octave higher, and those two together sound like this. That kind of ping pong sound. This is it without. No, this is it without. This is it with. And again, if you're doing this, make sure to turn the time quite far down, because otherwise, if you leave it on like the default, it will delay the sound more than you probably want. After that, just an overdrive, bring out the highs. The drive is quite high up. That muddies up the mids a lot, so I have FabFilter Pro and B here, just doing a giant cut in the mids for kind of the uglier parts, and then an erosion. And then after that, just some reverb. This is called Valhalla Imitation because I took one of my favorite Valhalla room presets, which is a plugin I don't own, and I just remade it, or just like typed in the settings really. I'm not sure if it's going to sound exactly like the Valhalla preset, but I just typed in any values I could that like sounded similar, and in this case I've got the decay time on a massive 9.38 seconds. Last thing is an auto filter, which just filters it up in the beginning, and then a utility with panning automation and volume automation later on. The next thing is the same trick I did as in Signs, where I render out the main chord sound in the drop, and I throw a bunch of effects on it, but just still leave it in the intro to kind of introduce the main sound, even though it doesn't really sound like it. So I'll go over the main chord when I get to it, but this sample, which I'm processing, sounds like this. So it's just the main chord sound from the drop there and those two chords. But I'm looping it here, and I'll turn off all the effects so you can hear what that sounds like. Okay, so the first thing in this effect chain is just an EQ to get rid of the muddy lows, because I mean you can tell by the waveform already. Look at those lows, that's not going to come across well. After that, I'm doing some parallel kind of work here. This first chain, goes from sounding like this to this with an erosion on. Then I've got a phaser, which only comes on later for this bit. I love using the phaser to create peaks in the source material. But after that, I've got another reverb again, hellishly long, 5.82 reverb time. And then a frequency shifter just for this bit, which becomes important because I turn the freeze on and I then keep the reverb buffer frozen and repeating essentially forever until I turn it off. But I frequency shift it up to make a kind of a sort of a riser, but that happens later on. That's that chain, and then this chain is 12 decibels quieter, and first thing here is just an EQ, just essentially processing the highs from here on. Cutting it about 1k. Then I've got this drum boss. And a pitch shifter. And then an amp. Which makes it really kind of artificially bright. I mean, you've already got the higher harmonics from the pitch shifting, and then the amp really brings out the harshness. So to tame that, I've got this cabinet. Isn't doing very much, but the amp isn't on 100% wet anyway. So that's those two chains, and altogether that sounds like this. Next up is another chord sound, which is just a sample, which I've put a ton of effects on again. That is, if I can get it to stop, this, oh dear, if I can get it to stop, this sample. Just a Rhodes sample, and then I'm kind of, oh my god, I'm like chopping it up and pitching it up a ninth and a tone. Sounds like that dry, and then I've got these two parallel chains again. The first one is just a delay, which is giving that delay in this bit here. You see it turns on there. Just a ping pong delay, standard ping pong delay with a bandpass filter. Well, I guess it's acting more like a high pass, but technically a bandpass filter. Dry wet is pretty high. Then it fades out for this one here, just so that there aren't any delays continuing as this kind of longer swell goes on. And then this one is kind of doing the majority of the work. Again, I've got this reverb freeze, which is something I did a lot back in like 2018, 2019. Mainly just because as far as I was aware, at that point I was still new to Ableton, and FL didn't have like a reverb freeze function on its fruity reverb. So I was like messing around with it, seeing like trying to get like as many different results from it as I could, because I just thought it was cool because I never had something like that. But it is quite messy to work with. So yeah, I have the freeze up from the beginning, basically, just buffering that first sample. Same reverb preset again. And if I just play that on its own, I'm not really doing too much sort of spectral processing, so it'll sound quite similar. It sounds like this. Just a nice ambient. Then I've got a pitch shifter, which comes on later here during the build. Then I've got an overdrive, which is giving it like that crinkly distortion sound, which is just sounds so pleasant on like really melodic chords when you have like that crinkly high end. I love that sound. And then a frequency shifter, which is shifting up and down during the build and during the drop and things. And then an auto filter. Oh. And an EQ, taking out lows because there are lows. And finally a compressor, which, oh my god, which is taking a sidechain, an extra sidechain, because I've already got a sidechain on this group, but this is taking an extra sidechain, and it's just making it super long, just making sure that this sound, especially during the drop here onwards, really gets muffled by whenever the drums hit, because I'll go over the sidechain in a second. It's a bit questionable, but yeah, that's that sound. And then I have this pluck sound, which is one of two pluck sounds. It's kind of the same patch, it's just I've got different processing, and they kind of play in tandem, so I'll play both of them here for the first half of the intro. Yeah, both of these I'm like doing quite a bit of automation on, because I just wanted to see how far I could take a simple operator sound, but I'll go over it. So this is it without effects. So it's just this square 8 waveform, which is one of the standard ones, it's that one, and it is just the first 8 harmonics of a square wave. So the first 8 odd ones, and then it's being FM'd by just a sine wave, same pitch but quieter, and it's got this pitch envelope on, which is giving more of an attack from like an octave. It's very little, but it does make a difference. In this case it's even less than an octave, because I've only got it up 16% instead of 100%. That's it, 100%, but it's doing a bit less than that. And then I have glide on 24.5 milliseconds here for these notes. You can hear it like ping up there, regardless of the pitch envelope. And then I just have the filter, which is doing quite a lot of work. I've got an envelope on it, and then using, again, a filter shape here, the OSR one, to distort the sound. That's the operator patch. It's quite a simple one. Now I've got all these effects, so we'll start off with this snap heap, where I'm automating on all of these resonators. We're in the key of C# minor, so that's root, octave, fifth, octave plus a fourth, and then just turning up the gain on all of those. And I think I'm automating this mix here. Check, yeah, I am. Just for certain notes here. That's it without. After that, I have this vocoder, which is modulating itself. And then just turns up over the course. That's it with. That's it without. After that, I have phase distortion, which I'm turning up in the second half here, and that sounds like this. You can kind of hear it. It's almost adding like another melody, like harmony to those two notes. I should do that more often. Then Kilohertz Brick Crush. I got all of these all of these plugins like for Christmas ones, and I was just going crazy with them. So yeah, Bit Crush. And then I'm automating it here, the rate, which you can hear. But yeah, bit crushing it pretty heavily, and then I've got delay. Which is doing the delay there. Normally, nowadays I'd use like this automation sort of thing to automate a delay send instead of automating the mix, because then I have control over when the audio gets sent to the delay without having to worry about the delay tails like interfering later on, which you have to do here. Like you have to have stopped the delay by then to stop this note being sent to the delay as well, which you can't do as well in like just using a track instead of a send. That's one of the main benefits. But yeah, it worked in this case. After that, I actually do not know how this plugin works. Like these bars, like I can use normal compressors just fine, but this plugin interface just absolutely drives me insane. And out of stubbornness, I've refused to learn it. So I just use OTT and this preset that Bandoom sent me, and this one in this case. Then I've got reverb after that, where I'm also automating on the mix. And here. Just pretty extreme. I wouldn't do that nowadays, but yeah, delay time goes up at the end. Decay time even goes up at the end. And then frequency shifter, same thing. Doing the same thing actually here as with the chord, where in the build, I did this for a lot of sounds. It goes from 0 to 500 hertz throughout the course of the build. Basically using it like a riser, even though it kind of shouldn't be, but I'm doing that. Then I've got an EQ, high passing, and also high passing higher as it frequency shifts up here, because if I were smart, I would have put this before the frequency shifter. But because the frequency shifter is like shifting this up, I have to adjust the EQ with it, because I've got it after, which I'm not sure why I did that, but I did it. So yeah, EQ, panning automation here. And there, like opposites, treating it like left side, right side. Well, no, wait, no. Right side, left side. And then a filter, because it was bit crushed before, and it, like the highs were like ugly, and now they're not ugly. So that's that sound. And then this one's going to be kind of similar. You know, you can see exactly the same plugins, just automating things around differently. So this one, in this case, just sounds like this. And they're like playing in tandem. So this one, when this has like the ARP runs, this one doesn't. And when this one has the ARP runs, this one doesn't. And I'm automating all of these sort of creative effects on and off to make sure they don't interfere too much and make it not too chaotic. After that, I have this granulator sound, which sounds like this. And this is this sample. Which I don't know what a quartalis is, but it sounds cool when you play a chord with it really low down. And I'm just doing the standard granulator thing, which I'm pretty sure I haven't used granulator to since this project, but I mean, I should, because it's a good plugin. And then I've just got an erosion, making it really noisy, resonators, tuned to the octave and 2 octaves up, because with the resonator plugin, like the second resonator here is for the left ear, and this one's for the right ear. So if you want the both ears to be like similar, you need to have the same resonator in for each ear, which is why I've got each one twice. And then after that, an EQ cutting out the lows, and auto filter, which is filtering it, because it's really harsh. And then I just resampled this and added an amp to it, which isn't doing very much, but I'm just automating up over there. Next up is the rhythm section, and the first like track in here, which I'll go over, is this 4 sample. Which I've processed a little bit, and it sounds like this without processing. I didn't make this sound, but I would bet money on the fact that it was made with Ableton grain delay and then resampled in Beats mode, because that kind of looping sound comes when you have Beats mode enabled and you choose the sort of forward loop mode, because then when you have two markers which are very close, like these two, for example, and you stretch one of them way out, what ends up happening is this original length that this time was gets looped up until it hits the next marker. And so when you have a very small marker distance and stretch out a long time, that's how you get those repetitions. And you can use that creatively, like whoever made this sample has in this case. So I've got a high pass on it and a frequency shifter, which is giving it the kind of timbre it has in the final. I'm also doing some binaural stuff, but that's only later on. Next up is this pause piano sample, which sounds like this. Just a sampled chord. And I've made it sound like this. So I put a fade on it, pitched it to the track, and then I've got a ton of effects on it, which make it sound like this. So the first one, I'll go through all of them, is an overdrive, and it sounds like this. This is without. Then an erosion, giving it the erosion sound, and a phaser, which I'm using to automate the frequency. Just creating peaks in it. And then this resonators. Same thing here, octave up and only a fifth up this time. This is what the resonators sounds like. Oh, what? That actually sounds sick. I don't know why I only had it on 29%. I should have kept it at 100. And then another resonators. Oh, I am a genius. For some reason I've got two, but this one's all the way up. Yes, I've got these two, which I'm not sure why I've done that, but I have just two standard resonators, like basically harmonizing it with an octave of itself. Reverb, which isn't actually that long. Just putting it in a normal space instead of like the world's largest cathedral. And then a frequency shifter, which I'm using for the build, like at the end section here. And an auto filter, filtering it up during the intro. And doing more over there. Now I've got an EQ, which is high passing it, and I guess removing some of the like the boosted 1K section from the overdrive. Yeah, just flattening out the spectrum a bit. Then I've got this Pro Q, which I tend to use Pro Q for more surgical stuff, and I guess I've done that here. Or just that one frequency there. Next up is this ocean rhythm sound, which sounds like this. And this is a sample I recorded myself in La Palma. It's just the ocean. And I've just made it into like a percussion layer by turning on the Beats mode warping. And instead of syncing it to the tiny grey markers by turning on transients, I've just synced it to every eighth note. And then using this dial here, you can basically make a rhythm out of any kind of ambient sound you have. Next up is the last group here, which is the ambience Foley group. And the first sample here is this cave water sample, which I recorded myself. Which is the sound of water sloshing into a cave in Cornwall. And the cave there was like, you couldn't enter in it. It was just basically where water went. And it was really narrow, and the entrance was tiny, but you could tell from the way the water that sloshed into it sounded that it like expanded beyond the entrance. And so it creates this really cool, like kind of muffled sound. Just puts it in a space that like no reverb ever could recreate. And so I love using this just to like, if I want some water sounds, but I don't want them to be like super, super harsh like some of my other ones, like those ones. This is like a nice alternative. This sample, I don't know what this is. that? Oh, I know what this is, probably. This sounds like one of my train recordings being put into Fruity Granulizer. Just like me dragging it in and messing around with all the controls and like live recording it. Yeah, I guess that's just like another sort of background layer. Okay, these next 16 bars sound like this. Okay, so the first thing here is a sub, which is literally just a sine wave, and it's playing like the root note. And is that fifth? It's not a fifth, it's a third. My relative pitch sucks. And it's just kind of like teasing the sub frequencies, because up until that point, like everything has been high passed. And so when the Reese comes in, it's not like too much of a surprise. I'm kind of like teasing. Yeah, just basically teasing here. Again, the piano. Oh. It's still the same chain and everything. It's just the vocoder pitch tracking is super unreliable. After that, I have this piano audio sample, which sounds like this. Which is just reversed. It's oh, it's actually an entire. I'll show you what the entire thing sounds like. This is just me playing my grandparents' upright piano, because I don't have an acoustic piano at home. It's also kind of out of tune. So whenever I go there, I just improvise on it for a while and use parts of that improvisation in my tunes. So in this case, I'm actually mirroring the solo line in this piano, which I'll get to later, but I'm mirroring it here. Next, I'll talk about the chord. So the main chord here during the build sounds like this. And like that during the drop. So this is just, yeah, so it's just the I chord. And it's an operator patch with a shit ton of effects on it. And the operator patch alone just sounds like this. So first off, there's just a triangle wave. Then I'm FMing it by this oscillator, and this oscillator is being FM'd by these two in parallel. So this is just sine wave, same frequency, and I've turned up the fine here to 8, just to kind of get that beating sound. This is what it is when it's at 0. It's just completely flat. So this is a good way to kind of get movement in. And then these are even more detuned, so the beating intensifies. And then the filter, which is doing a lot. Quite a low cutoff, not really low cutoff, but quite low cutoff. And I'm using the filter drive here to shape the sound. After that, an EQ, which is taking out the lows, although it's not doing a very good job because this resample has a ton of lows in it. And then after that is this effect rack. So I've got this main sound here, and then two other ones which kind of come in later. So I'll go through this one. The first thing here is just an amp, which gradually increases, and the first thing here is just an amp, which gradually increases, and it sounds like this. And then after that, after these first 4 bars, I have a saturator, which takes the place. You see here the dry wet's going up, and for the amp, the dry wet's going down. So it kind of takes the place of this amp. So the highs aren't as intense, but it stays being a similar, like still distorted, and I kind of like it. It kind of softens it after the first 4 bars here. That's the difference. After that, phaser, which is really bringing out the main sort of movement, main timbre of the sound with those poles. A chorus, which isn't doing too much. And then, again, like with the piano, I've got this grain delay, 12 semitones up, and then kind of low frequency to get that beating effect when it does happen. This is it without. This is it with. That's that chain. This one is, I've processed the highs separately again, so this is this chain. It's kind of crunchy, but not as wet as the other one. So I've got a high pass there, similar phaser to the other one, 3 poles, dry wet quite far up. Then I'm using a preset on the amp, which I don't usually do, but I mean, there's not that many knobs anyway. About 50% dry wet and erosion -1 for some reason. And then just a bit of compression. So this is what it sounds like without these 4. And then I'll add them back in. Phaser, amp, erosion, and drum bass. And then this last one is super kind of inharmonic, but also not. So I'm, again, taking only the highs. This time the high pass is a bit lower, so it actually has like more melodic content to work with. Then I've got this grain delay, but instead of doing the trick where you have it really low, the frequency, like that, I've got it up to 34 hertz. And then at that point it starts generating its own harmonics. I've even got the feedback up here to help with that. And then I've got this comb filter, 69.3. Oh, yeah, which is tuned to the root. So the great thing, the incredible thing about Melda's comb filter is you can enter in the notes. Like, you don't even need to type the hertz value, and you can just go here or here or here, and it does it automatically. And the best part for me, especially because I've been experimenting with tunings, is you can decide where your A440 is tuned to, which in this case is an issue because it's just, oh my god, you have tunings inside of tunings. Anyway, in this case it's not an issue because this track isn't detuned, but for some of my other ones it's come in really handy, and this is just tuned to C sharp, which is the root. And then all 3 of those together, it sounds like this. They're not on in that bit. Then finally, just kind of cleaning up the sound. Fab Filter Pro and B, kind of getting the low mids under control, boosting the highs. I mean, you can tell there's just, it's huge in the low mids. And giving it kind of some air to some room to breathe with those highs. Then again, I've got this chord, which is doing the same thing, but now it has that reverb. Or is it the reverb freeze chain? It's not this one, it's this one. And you'll see that freeze turn on. There. And then just keeps that reverb buffer going. And it gets frequency shifted up to there. And it also fades out. Dry wet goes down. After that, again, this chord sample. Doing the same thing here, having a parallel chain for the reverb which doesn't mess with the dry one, and then frequency shifting it up for the build. Same thing here, 2 plucks playing in tandem. And this is just a mix of enabling the snap heaps, turning on the reverb freeze, having delays on some parts of the sound while not having it on others. It's really just about fitting the effects in ways that complement the two melody lines together. As I was working through the track and as I got into an arrangement that I liked, I decided to just render out the whole thing and use it as a texture itself. So this is pitched down 24, and then it's also like sped up. That and this. And I'm just using essentially this render I'm using that render as another thing to lead into to the drop. It sounds shit, but it works in context because I'm just like filtering it, and it's not that obnoxious in context. Here, another rhythm blip. That's cool. Oh, I haven't really done all that much, so it's just this sample, and then another rhythm blip here. Yeah, I'm guessing using like a lot of grain delay percussion here, sort of like granular percussion, and then repeating sections of it to establish this rhythm. Same thing here, that sounds like a granular sound to me, which I've quantized. And then frequency shift doing nothing and just filtering. And here too. Yeah. Just using the delay, automating the delay time from something really short to something slightly longer. Which if I turn the feedback up, you can hear it there. Just slowly it's going into a bigger space, and I'm frequency shifting it down there. Yeah, and I've got delay, a phaser, again, similar thing, using Earth this time, which is the yucky one, not sure why I did that. Reverb on quite long decay, taking out highs, taking out lows, and panning it here. Same blip here. Just stretching that one out. And automating the phaser with it. Where is it? This phaser. Then I've got this tack sound. Just more percussion, more 8th note percussion. With a very small grain delay on it and an auto filter. And here I've got, oh, I love these. Okay, this is like cymbal noise. I don't know how to explain it, but it's as if you took like a cymbal recording and put it into a reverb and then turned the freeze on, because it's just like the exact shape of a cymbal, but it's like stretched out to infinity. And I love using these instead of cymbals because you don't have to worry about like it being too transienty with these. And overall, the rhythm section sounds like this. Then I have this ambience again, where for these like last 4 bars before the drop, I just found all the train sounds I could. So I've got this one. I recorded this one myself, and I've just warped it here with these 4. And then I've got another one which isn't mine, but it sounds like this. Another one which also isn't mine. Which is more percussive. And then last, this one, which also isn't mine. Synced it to the tempo. And then this one. And they sound like this together. More cave water here. And more meaningless ambience. A couple more train samples for good measure. And then this is my brother's penny board. Now I'll talk about the drums. So I've just got this fill before the drop, which is my sister's drum kit. So this is the main kick. Really, really stompy, really like long decay time as well. Not the kind of kick I'd use like nowadays. Then I've got this snare, which is 3 layers. This is the first snare layer. Rim shot with reverb on it. This is the second one. Like a clap, which I made myself. And then a clap layer. And those two together sound like this. And then here. And I'm using this tap send delay here. You see here it's at -12. Obviously I'm high passing the delayed signal so that it doesn't interfere, because that would be muddy. Then this is another thing I don't do. I'm taking the sidechain from the drum group itself. Nowadays I just have like a trigger group where the like triggers are 2 octaves higher so that they're much faster than the drums themselves, but I guess I just didn't care because that's the sidechain. It's kind of messy. Okay, now let's get into the drop. For the most part, this is like the same instruments as in the intro, just like expanded on, or like it's the main thing. Let's start off with this Reese. This is a serum patch. Which I made myself. It's a Reese. It's got the sub oscillator on the sine square mode, a square, kind of squarey wavetable with pulse width modulation, and my favorite ever wavetable, which is like 3 sine waves and then a couple of harmonics around, like on the like sides of it. So it's got those two together, they're both being unisoned. This one, LFO, is like controlling it. And then these 2 wavetables are being affected by the low pass filter. I've also got this noise. And then all of that's going into just some more stereo distortion, stereo compression. So it's a pretty standard Reese bass, just multiple wavetables detuned and being distorted together. But then I've got a lot of processing on it. Well, a lot for a Reese bass. It's not a lot compared to what I normally do, but there's a bit of overdrive here. Just automating it on there for a note, and some downsampling too, near here the end. It's being filtered, so there. Just in the break section. Then I've got this vinyl distortion, which I never used vinyl distortion like back then, so I just got a preset here for this bit. But for the most part, it's quite a simple Reese patch. Then in the drop, I've got the main chord sound here, adding in an extra melody line there, and then extensions to the chords in this section. And in this bit, I thought it was cool to get like some real filter movement going. So, I mean, it's just a low pass, but it's quite... Next up is, the pluck, yes. So, this pluck is the same one as here, just with more, all of the automation, obviously. The way I wrote this melody is, I have no clue. I just knew I wanted something really, really frantic and kind of all over the place to contrast the smooth and slow chords. And I think I nailed it with this. That's the pluck, and it's, again, just the exact same things being automated as in the intro. It's just a lot of stuff coming on. I mean, it's quite labor intensive, but it's really worth it. And the biggest thing for me probably was all this panning automation. So just really making it all over the place, like darting around, was really the thing the kind of aim I had for this pluck line. Yeah, and I think I did it quite well. More percussion, rhythm blip coming back in the end. More fall down blip. Just the same sample. This, and oh yes, stones. Similar to what I did in Signs, just taking recordings of me throwing stones onto the ground and arranging them to make a rhythm. Subtle autopan and frequency shifted. Percussion. And this one, which is that, and I've just stretched it a bit, well, and like made it shorter, added a bit of reverb, frequency shifter, resonator, making it tonal, same resonator as before, and then I have this Sakura Burst top loop. Oh yeah, I use this one in Dark Mind. Kind of added in some edits myself. Matching the filter movement there. Yeah, that's the rhythm section. And then ambience, I added a couple more things. So this train sample continues. And this was actually really important because in earlier versions of the project, I had no idea how to mix. I mean, to be honest, I only really started figuring out how to get high-end that works halfway through 2020. In this project, I had no clue what I was doing in terms of high-end, just because I loved mixing stuff super muddy, until I sent it to Ayla for feedback, and he told me to just add in like some really, it didn't even have to be tonal, like just some noise. And so I thought I'd use the train recordings and the penny board and layer them on top, and that ends up becoming like a crucial part to giving this track its high-end presence. I mean, it was all well and good at the time having that rich chord, but without this group, it just sounds so empty in the drop, and this is what it sounds like without. Compared to this, I mean, it just does so much for the track. But yeah, that's the first drop. And then we go into this short break section, just like 8 bars, and then it's straight back into drop again. But there is some new stuff that happens here arrangement-wise, so I'll go over it. So this Reese, just filters and gets the down sample. Then I have the piano come back in. And originally, when I was arranging this, you can see that this here is almost the same as this here. Well, you can see that's the same pattern, and it's kind of a repeat of this section, these first 8 bars in the outro. And originally I wasn't going to have a second drop, but then I decided against it, and I decided to essentially copy this, put the second drop in, and then have that section again. But obviously I had to modify it a little bit, and that's where these sounds come in. So this piano audio track is, again, the recording from me improvising at my grandparents' house. And I just took the parts of the recording and looped them. I've got a ton of processing on it, so I'll go over all of that. This sounds more like a normal piano now. Just time stretched out. So the first thing is a transient shaper, just getting rid of any kind of impact I may have had on the piano keys. Really driving up the sustain. Then I've got these 3 parallel chains. This is the first one. No, this is the first one. Using the grain delay, -12 this time. Saturating it, adding in a phaser, just kind of exciting it a bit. Autopan. getting that 8th note rhythm. Another one here. Which is it pitched up? Probably an octave. Yeah, an octave. And then I've got ring mod. And a resonator. Even though it still sounds like kind of atonal. And then this one, which isn't up here, which is up here. Super, super like compressed. Doing the opposite, having like loud transients here, but then only having the highs. And you can hear what it does to the low end. And all three of those together sound like this. I'm using here the auto filter to filter it up and also have that still have that 8th note rhythm while I'm filtering it. That's it without. Then I have the chords again. Just same thing as the intro, and another chord here. Which, let me find out what that sounds like. Oh, it's just the same chord again, just leading into the second drop. This free sample. Oh, granulator again. Just distorted more. Panning over to the other side. Another granulator. I've just got the octave trick again with the grain delay. Some erosion which comes in later. And yeah, have an auto filter after. I've got the rhythm blip. And operator acid sound design, which is a really old sound design session of mine. Yeah. I mean, it's hardly acid at this point, is it? Yeah, just me messing around in operator, and I just took some cuts from that to make a rhythm. Again, cutting out lows, because I mean, it's pretty low heavy. And then we get into the second drop. So most of the things in the second drop are the same, it's just that like the sort of lead elements change. The chords change to the 3-3-2 rhythm that the kick and the percussion play as well. And then the second half they don't, because I kind of have it's not really a piano solo, but I'm using the piano as a lead instrument. Oh, actually I'll go over that now. Here's the piano in the second half of the second drop. That's where those two come together. And that's the solo. I had to do so much volume automation on this because of all the like effects that really react to dynamic sounds, like all of the amps and the vocoders and stuff. This amp especially, I really had to mess around with the volumes and get everything sounding nice even after the effects, which was quite a tough thing to do. And I mean, even in the end, this is like, I spent so long mixing this. But yeah, that's the piano. I wish I had like, I wish I were able to play a solo like that and have it sit well in the mix, but unfortunately, I ended up going for just doing the option, which was choosing the option which was easier to mix in the long run, and I'm kind of glad I did, because I don't think I would have been happy had I played this myself. This is in context with just the melodic group. Chord 3 is like an E piano kind of thing. It's like syncing up to the piano line in parts. And again, I'm doing the parallel chain thing here. So this is just a standard operator, oscillator B being FM'd, or no, oscillator A being FM'd by oscillator B, pitch envelope, filter envelope. And I've got this parallel chain. This is the first one. Just amp and erosion. This is it without. And then the second one, which is more of a sort of typical distorted or saturated E-piano sound. Then I have this chord layer, which sounds like this. This is almost definitely a preset. When I make operator patches, don't really make them like this. This is what it sounds like without effects, but it's just got reverb and echo on. Heavy filter envelope, and then heavy reverb. Well, not that heavy. Just really, really big dry wet. No diffuse whatsoever. Which kind of keeps it clean. And then echo. So, okay, so now I'll go over the ARP. This is an operator patch, again. Playing that melody. FM, this one being FM by these two, those two being FM by this one. Pitch envelope, not doing much. And this is what it sounds like. It's just a sine wave. Square wave FM, octave down. Sine wave FM, octave down. And then these two, triangle wave 2 times as high. With a bit of beating. But you can't really hear it because it's a pluck sound. Bit crushing. Auto filter. Here. Yeah. And then, once again, parallel chains. The best part about Ableton, basically just making it huge. So, snap heap with phase distortion and an octave down pitch shifter with a low dry wet. Let me turn off everything else so that you actually know what's making what sound. There we go. Phase distortion and pitch shifter. That's it without. Kind of like automatic double tracking, but for this ARP. Phaser. Cutout delay. And I have the duck all the way up. So what that means is, as long as this is playing, the delay doesn't really come through. And it's only here where it then comes in, because the duck is like a sidechain, but for the signal itself. So whenever the dry signal is still playing, the delay doesn't come through, and that lets you keep it clean. Reverb. Big reverb. And a bit of saturation. And then to get this kind of... I just automated the phaser down here. Turn the dry wet all the way up. And that kind of creates a transition effect because this gets layered with something. Then I've got this chain, which is really robotic, really resonancy, and that's because I've got a resonator on it and a pitch shifter, pitching it down an octave. And a delay, which is like creating that comb filtery sound. Now I'm just taking the highs from it. Which I shouldn't have done because those low notes sound sick, but that's what I did. And then this, in this section here, gets layered with another one, which is just the pluck 2. So here I've got the pluck 1 playing like a solo, and here it's the second pluck. Same thing essentially. And I'm using the auto filter. You can really hear it here. LFO. To just keep that movement in. And that's doing like the sort of 8th note ARP run throughout the drop. I'll go over to the outro now. Whoa. So the first thing here is this Reese, which I frequency shifted up for this bit, which is probably really bad for like speakers that actually have a decent bass response, but why not? It sounds cool. Making like a break there. This is the piano. Playing the same thing as there. And then I have this ending bit, which is like... plays an outro melody, I guess. Something that you've never really heard, and I kind of like that. It gets joined by this E-piano sound. Doing like some runs, I guess. And then it hits there with... Did I do it in MIDI? I can't remember. I didn't. There's a really big like pitch drop. Oh, I automated the time it took. Yeah. So while here the pitch envelope is only 60 milliseconds, 64. You don't really hear it, but here it just goes to 600 and it's just... Takes a lot longer to get there. And then from there onwards, yeah. Same chord sound as before. Just all being repeated in various ways. This one as well. The Cretales granulator. Playing lower notes. Just really building up an ambience with the sounds I used before. And yeah, I mean, for the outro, there's not too much happening. It's just, I guess, bringing the track to an end and continuing the ambience from before. And it ends on this piano note. So yeah, thanks for watching. The next track I'll be breaking down will be Slate, the second track from my Tines EP. If you want to be notified of that, hit the subscribe button, as well as any future breakdown videos, because I will be breaking down through the majority of my tracks in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.